The Miami Hurricanes have just made the final three for the top defensive linemen in the class of 2025. Can Mario Cristobal get this one over the finish line?
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, if there is such a thing. I'm Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, writer for allhurricanes.com, and co-host of Locked On ACC. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The recruiting overlord is about to join us, and he's always brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. On this loaded episode of Locked On Canes, we will talk about a top 2026 player who visited the U at the weekend recruiting cookout that just happened this past Saturday. Is Miami making a move for Jaime Ffrench, five-star wide receiver? He was on campus. Who are the top contenders to land his signature? There seems to be a new defensive lineman target for Miami in this recruiting cycle, but let's open with someone who definitely is not a new target on the defensive line, and that's Elijah Griffin, five-star, top defensive lineman in the entire class. And as Brian Smith joins us, our recruiting expert here on the Locked On Network. So Elijah Griffin dropped his top three finalists last night, Brian, and Miami made the cut. Georgia, USC, and Miami. Do the Hurricanes have a realistic shot here, or is it Georgia Bulldogs or bust?
I mean, everybody's picking Georgia, but there's two things with this. Number one, name a year that Miami hasn't surprised somebody with a kid they got since Mario's been here, and he's done it multiple times in classes. And two, if he is as dead set on Georgia as I've been told, why hasn't he just committed? I mean, it's an easy pick. I understand. I mean, he's in Georgia. He's a defensive. I get it. Why hasn't he just committed? So at this point, I think we're far enough along to think that if you're on the list, you're an option. So NIL will play a role and all that stuff, but like all these schools are good. He's going to look at development. This is a kid that legitimately should think of himself as a future NFL player. He's elite. He's been on the radar since his 8th grade year. Like he's a very unique football player physically. I think Miami and USC should look at it like we're in it to win it. That's how I view it.
Yeah, and so you talk about like when is he going to announce? It sounds like the soonest that could happen is October 12th, which is his birthday. You know, he had mentioned he had kind of talked about probably waiting till December to announce, so around National Signing Day, but then he did tell On3 Sports that he might do it as soon as October 12th. As far as the visits go, Brian, he's been, to my knowledge, he's been down to Miami twice. Elijah Griffin made an unofficial visit back in March during spring football. He made the official visit to Miami on the weekend of June 7th. The other OV that he took in June was to USC on June 21st. And Brian, he still hasn't used that OV to Georgia yet, so I would assume he's saving that for sometime during the fall. So that could be another advantage for Georgia, that they may get the last official visit with him before he makes an announcement.
That's the feather in the cap, and Georgia knew they were the leader in the clubhouse, so they probably did that. I spoke to somebody that knows him recently, and they thought that he would make a signing day decision, you know, for whatever that's worth. Does that mean he's committed somewhere and he's still looking around? That's my guess. He may commit to try to get people to leave him alone, but I always thought that's something that kids do. I've had those conversations, but I get it. At the same time, he's too good for SC or Miami to care. And it's not like somebody else like South Carolina who was in on him early is going to stop recruiting him either. So I look at it like Miami just has to go all the way through signing day. If you don't get him, you don't get him. You're playing with house money here. And he's an elite player. So you got to recruit him.
Yeah, I mean, Elijah Griffin, one of the ultimate prizes in this class. I mentioned he's the top defensive lineman. He's the top overall player in the state of Georgia. He's the 4th overall rated recruit in the entire country, but he's not the only defensive lineman that Miami is after right now. In fact, Brian, Miami just made a new offer yesterday. So this is a player on the D-line that was down in South Florida for the recruiting cookout on Saturday. The Hurricanes just offered him on Sunday, and that's 3-star Chaminade-Madonna defensive lineman Donta Simpson, 6'3", about 290 pounds. Now, he's actually currently committed to Maryland, but it sounds like Donta has been a Miami fan his entire life and was waiting for this offer. So you have to wonder if a flip could be imminent here.
I think that this looks good for the Canes. They didn't offer for fun. You know, he came down. They wanted to meet him. They kind of, I mean, they obviously know Chaminade well. They recruit that program as hard as any in the country. He comes down, gets offer. He's a fan. No offense to Maryland, but I highly doubt they have a lot of pull over Miami for a South Florida kid. Prove me wrong. But if he doesn't commit in the next week or so, I'd be surprised. That's kind of my prediction. Maybe he wants to be done before his season starts too. For those who don't know, high school football starts up like full-fledged in a couple weeks. So this is an interesting time. There'll be a few kids commit around the country like this, trying to get it done. I think Simpson's one of those.
Yeah, and Donta Simpson, this is what he told Inside the U, Miami 24/7. This was actually before he received his Miami offer on Sunday. After he visited Saturday, he said about getting an offer, he said, "I hope so. I've been looking at Miami my whole life." He said, "I always wanted to play for them, so I hope they offer me." Well, he's now got the offer. We'll see what happens. And sticking with the defensive line, Brian, a player who ended up being, I think, a surprise visitor. And I'm not sure if the Florida State staff knew that he was coming down to Miami.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah. Myron Charles, the 4-star defensive lineman who's been committed to the Florida State Seminoles. He's kept his recruitment open, he mentioned. He was down at the Miami barbecue. You cover Florida State very closely, Brian. Is there concern up in Tallahassee as to how solid of a commit Mr. Charles is?
To my knowledge, this is a situation they knew was going to be long-term anyway. I don't know if Myron called them to say, hey, just so you know, but with the big-time recruits like this, especially positions of need like D-tackle, the recruits in the driver's seat. I mean, Florida State could drop him for doing it. I don't see that happening. He's a D-tackle. He's a 300-pound kid that's athletic. So the ball is in his court. But Miami hasn't given up on him. This is the trend. We should count this up. I don't know the number. How many kids has Miami flipped since Mario and his staff have arrived in Coral Gables? It's a bunch.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. I mean,
I should know that number, to be honest. That's on me. But it's a lot. Anytime they get a kid on campus that's committed somewhere else, you're automatic, in my mind, you should automatically be like, okay, there's a chance here. They do as good a job as any school in the country with it. And he's an in-state kid, and he's from the greater Southwest Florida area. He's not that far from Miami. It's closer, much closer. He's 3 hours away, 3 hours and 15 minutes. It's a lot further to Tallahassee. I think that Miami fans should pay close attention to Mr. Charles.
It's an awesome time of year to talk recruiting, and there's so much going on. We just talked about a bunch of defensive linemen. I want to talk about receivers and DBs when we come back, because Miami just had a 5-star wide receiver on campus over the weekend. We know Miami has aimed high when it comes to receiver recruiting in this cycle. What's the latest on Jaime Ffrench? We're going to get to that and so much more. We got the recruiting overlord with us, and folks, we're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. You want to keep it locked. I'm so happy that Ibotta is back with us here on the Locked On Network, because I've saved so much money, gotten so much cash back, shopping for things I would be shopping for anyway on the awesome Ibotta app. It's summertime. We're all grilling. You can stock up on all your grilling favorites and earn cash back on every purchase when you use Ibotta. So you won't have to choose between burgers or hot dogs. You can have both, believe me. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries, beauty supplies, even toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight you've been eyeing, or the fancy dinner you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't really amount to much, but with Ibotta, you earn cash back that you can withdraw to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. Simply add offers in the app, upload your receipt, and voila, the money is yours. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying the app. using our code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store, download the free Ibotta app, start earning cash back with the code LOCKEDONCollege. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store, and use code LOCKEDONCollege. We're also proudly brought to you by Factor Meals. If you're looking to turn over that healthy lifestyle and have the easiest, most delicious prepared meals, you've got to check this out, guys. Make today the day you kickstart a new healthy routine. What are you waiting for? With 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, you'll always have new flavors to explore with Factor Meals. Crush your wellness goals this May with dietitian-approved meals and ingredients that you can trust. Make your day delicious from breakfast to dessert. Stay fueled with easy, nutritious options. You could treat yourself to restaurant-quality meals that feature premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, and blackened salmon. Head over to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 and use our code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code LockedOnCollege50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Check it out at Factor Meals. Thank you so much for making this Monday episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We are with the recruiting overlord, Brian Smith. So, Brian, Miami just got a weekend unofficial visit. They did get the OV in the month of June from Jaime Ffrench was on campus. And he actually had a little weekend where he went to LSU on Friday, Miami on Saturday. And I'm wondering here, Brian, if you follow the visits, there's been a lot of LSU and Miami buzz lately for the Mandarin High School five-star wide receiver standout. We've already had a number of skirmishes and recruiting battles between Miami and LSU. Could this be shaping up to be another one of those?
It certainly seems that way. Jaime goes to LSU. The very next day, he goes to Miami. Their recruiting weekends were kind of just big events for both schools, so Jaime decided to go both. I don't know what's going to happen with him next. It seems like every time I check in with somebody or Jaime, there's a new school trending. I've kind of given up on predictions on him. I'll just find out on National Signing Day. I know he's supposed to announce August 30th, allegedly, but I don't put a whole lot of stock in that with Jaime in particular. I've known him since he's 14. He flies by the seat of his pants. He's a kid that's also overwhelmed with how hard he's being recruited. Miami did have a very favorable impression, and they've only got one kid committed in this class, and he gets along with Luke Nickel. That was clear from, if you check social media, him and Luke hung out. I think Miami's right there. If you'd have asked me a week ago, I'd have said Miami's not getting this kid. Now that things have changed, and that's why you just keep recruiting kids. Alex, like Miami, again, they do a tremendous job of staying on kids all the way through. It's the only way to maximize your opportunities, and they do a tremendous job.
Yeah, Mario Cristobal told me last week that your best recruiters are your players, and sometimes your best recruiters are recruits, right? Because you mentioned Luke Nickel. I know that Jaime spent a lot of time with Luke at the cookout. Jaime also spent a lot of time with his high school teammate Hilton Drake Stubbs, who's committed to Miami. And it's funny, you mentioned how hard Jaime is to read. Drake Stubbs said the same thing, Brian. And you know, he's probably closer with Jaime than anybody. And even Hilton said, like, I'm recruiting. He likes Miami, but I don't know what he's going to end up doing here. But on the field, I mean, give me the reasons why Jaime Ffrench is considered to be the fourth-ranked wide receiver in the entire class of 2025. What makes this player so special?
3 or 4 things. Number one, his stop and start ability. The ability to YouTube somebody is elite. I'm not trying to pick on people, but I've seen that happen numerous times at camps and combines. Also, his ability to find the sideline and not only not go out of bounds, like he'll turn it up and score when it looks like he's going out of bounds. His balance, his natural athleticism is there. And then finally the hands. He makes some ridiculous catches in back shoulder fades, one-handed catches. This look normal, and they're not. He makes plays you can't teach. And that's what you're looking for in a 5-star player. He is absolutely an NFL player in waiting. He just has to stay healthy and gain weight. Everything else is there. And by the way, super motivated. He hates to lose a rep. Very competitive young man.
You know, Miami also had a couple of important 2025 defensive backs on campus. A player we've talked about a lot is Ben Hanks Jr. You know, he's got some ties to the Miami program, but a lot more ties to the Florida Gators program with his father having been there. So, Brian, coming out of June, the trends were really favoring Florida, had a great official visit there, but he was down in Miami for the cookout. I know a lot of the players that are on Miami's roster and Miami recruits are trying to recruit him to come to the U. What is it going to take for Miami to maybe make up ground and close the gap with Florida?
Well, this is one of those situations where you just keep recruiting him. I think the visits are the key here. They got to get him back to Coral Gables during the season around, like Mario's told you, the players and stuff. And of course it helps if you win and all that. But I just think it's the grind. I don't think there's an outlier decision on how this works. If you go and get the kid on campus like Florida, just as an example, that's a dumpster fire waiting to happen. We all know it. I'm not going to shy away from that conversation here on Locked On Canes. Unless they come out, beat Miami and a bunch of other schools, that staff's in trouble. Just stay the course. This is who we are. We're going to be here. And of course, it would help to beat Florida, etc. But I just don't think there's a lot of stability in Gainesville. I think that everybody's in play. That's a commitment for them, for anybody, by the way, because that's a relatively certain firing situation. I think Miami's in as good a spot as anybody because they're a trending up program right now. So prove me wrong is kind of what I'm saying here.
Another big-time defensive back who was here for the cookout was Bryce Fitzgerald, safety from Miami Columbus. And there are Columbus connections galore. That's where Mario Cristobal and Alex Mirabal went to high school. People have been asking me about Fitzgerald a lot recently. And I, up until maybe the last week or two, I couldn't really tell where Miami stood for him. I didn't really get a sense that Miami was trending well for Fitzgerald. I think I'm starting to feel differently, especially with him coming down for the cookout. And he said he was really glad he got another look at Miami before the dead period, which just started. So I don't know, Brian, do you get the sense that Miami is firmly in the mix for Bryce, or what's it going to take to get in there?
I think they are. And your point is important there. Mirabal and Cristobal went to that program. It's arguably as important a school as there is for Miami to recruit yearly. Obviously, Central and Northwestern will come into that conversation, Booker T. But this is a kid that is really good. He's really versatile. He's well-liked by everybody. He fits the program, your locker room. I don't think Miami is going to bypass him. I'd heard people say they didn't think that he was a priority earlier this spring or what. I'm like, really? I don't know if that's true or not. I find that hard, especially with him being from Columbus. But I think he's a great player. I think it would be a mistake not to prioritize him because he can play multiple spots like nickel. I think Miami's right there. I just think the kid's taking his time, which is cool. I'd rather you do that and then so like some of these other kids that commit 4 times. But yeah, Miami's right there in the mix from what I heard here recently. I just don't think he's made a decision.
Well, I want to talk about one of the top players in the class of 2026. Happens to be a local standout. And again, I know 2026 feels a long way away, but you want to see it's not. Exactly. It is not. And also, I want to talk a little bit more with Brian Smith when we come back about the importance of that opening game against Florida. Because again, one game doesn't define an entire recruiting class, but I think this is a massive one. You know what you want to do? We're not done yet. You want to keep it locked right here on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. And I already know you're keeping it locked to FanDuel. Guys, we've been getting through the summer with international soccer, the Olympics going on now. I'm betting on swimmers and sprinters, Major League Baseball going on. But before you know it, in less than 4 weeks, college football is going to be back. NFL is going to be back before you know it. There's so much going on at FanDuel. Guys, this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. For your second listen, make sure you check out Locked On ACC. I co-host that show with Kenton Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack. We go around the conference. We cover the lawsuits, the legal disputes, all the conference realignment rumors. We start previewing ACC football as, again, we're just a few weeks away from actually getting on the field action once again, which is great. So make sure you make Locked On ACC your second listen today. We've got the recruiting overlord, Brian Smith, with us here on Locked On Canes. So, Brian, Miami was graced with the presence this weekend of top 2026 player. Well, he's 13th rated. That's pretty close to top. 13th ranked player in the class of 2026. Miami Northwestern receiver Calvin Russell was on campus. Is this guy like the Jeremiah Smith of the 2026 class? What can you tell me about Russell?
I don't know if anybody's going to top Jeremiah in talent. That's going to be rough, but this kid is special. Here's the unique part. I was actually talking to John Garcia Jr. about this the other day. He's only started playing receiver in a more full-time role recently. I don't know what Northwestern's going to have at quarterback this year. Those things change, but he played a lot of quarterback and he's been practicing it for quite a while. Imagine what this kid's going to do once he plays one spot being receiver. He's 6'4", 6'5", 195 pounds. He told me that the other day, and just makes, kind of like Ffrench, makes crazy catches, and he makes it look mundane, like it's natural. He was at Miami's camp that had a 7-on-7 with Northwestern recently. His length is ridiculous. He's the kind of kid that changes ball games. He can be the boundary receiver that everybody wants, and he's fast enough to take a reverse to the house. He has all the physical tools. So he just needs to add a little more weight to be done. He's got 2 years of high school left. This is an NFL player. He knows it. Teddy and all them down there at Northwestern know it. How are they going to use him and how he develops the next year or so is interesting, because I think he could be a day one starter at a lot of major college football programs.
By the way, how is Teddy Bridgewater being received there at his alma mater since taking that job? Because I was so happy for him. And listen,
yeah,
I know Teddy never played at Miami, but he's still a local guy. We claim him in South Florida. How's that been going for Teddy?
Everything that I've heard is good. Now, taking over a program like that, there's a lot of obstacles. The boosters there and everything, like it's a big deal at Northwestern. So I'm curious to see how it goes after they lose their first game. God forbid they ever lose a game at Northwestern. But everything's been positive. So I hope, keywords, I hope that continues, because, again, it's good for the community when a guy that's ultra successful, I mean, he played in the NFL for a long time. That's cool. Comes back. He didn't have to take that job. You know what I mean? And that's good for the entire South Florida area when guys invest in young people. That never goes out of style. So everything I've heard is positive, and I expect Northwestern to be a power once again.
Brian, we're just over a month away from Miami opening up that season in the swamp in Gainesville against the Florida Gators. And I've learned over the years that you never should oversell one individual game when it comes to recruiting. That, most recruits don't make a decision based on the outcome of one game, right? It's a relationship building. It's a long process. With that said, that game at Florida, it's massive recruiting for both sides, right? How significant is that one game when it comes to some of these top players that both Miami and Florida are vying for, like a Ben Hanks, for example?
I think this is a unique scenario where it carries more weight. I spoke to a kid recently that's committed to UF, and like I said, do you have a backup plan if anything goes wrong? And he said, yeah, I'm going to look around, and if it does, he was real. And I think every kid looks at it like that. In the case of Hank, it's really weird. I feel bad for him because his dad is who his dad is. You don't pick your parents. His dad's a legend at the University of Florida. He was a heck of a football player. I'm sure his dad would like him to be a Gator, but if you're the dad, you also want your kid to play for a staff is going to be there. Even somebody like Hanks, that's tough. If they were a top 5 program right now, do you really think Hanks wouldn't be committed to the Gators?
No, he would be for sure.
Yeah, that's what I think. But if they go down the gullet of the beast and fall apart this year, like many of us think, where's he going to go? I would not be surprised at all if it's the University of Miami. You want to go somewhere that it's stable. You know what I mean? I don't care who you root for. I don't care where you went to school. You want your kid to have stability with the staff, and they'd be starting from scratch again. And that's just hard, man. I mean, if he still wants to go to UF in that scenario, God bless him. But I think Hanks in particular, your dad's a Gator, that's got to be weird for him. So I think you got to have backup plan. Any kid that's committed to a school should in general, but especially one with the coach is obviously on the hot seat. It's, the head coach at the high school he's at, the parents, everybody should be like, look, let's at least continue communication. And I think that's why he's still on the market.
Well, incredible job here as always by Brian Smith, the recruiting overlord. Make sure you follow him on X at FBScout_Florida. Make sure you check out his work. He's my colleague at allhurricanes.com. He works incredibly hard there and produces awesome content. So make sure you check out allhurricanes.com. Brian, thank you so much for taking the time. And well, are you taking a little break during this is the dead period, right? Does that mean you get a break or no?
Just the opposite. High school football is getting ready to rev up with all the practices. I'm actually, barring something changing, I'm planning to stop by to see DJ Pickett this week. Then I'm going to IMG. So just there's recruits for Miami all over the place and all these other schools, and they're practicing. It's never an off week, Alex.
So tell DJ Miami still has their arms wide open, that he doesn't have to follow through with this LSU thing if he doesn't want to. Miami's still waiting for him.
I'm sure that he's well aware.
Oh, man. Awesome stuff as always. Guys, if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you smash that like button, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to Locked On Canes on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the audio version, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your pods. And we will talk to everyone again next time on another app. Oh, by the way, I want to tell you what's coming up next this week, because we got Media Day tomorrow in Coral Gables. So I'm going to be talking. I'll talk to every player on the roster if I have time to. So Media Day coming up tomorrow. We're going to have a lot of content from Coral Gables. First practice is on Wednesday, so we're going to be loaded this week on Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.